Hello and welcome to TK Q&A, questions and answers about transitional kindergarten. I'm your host, Amy Moser, UPK coordinator for the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. Today, I'm very excited to have a guest in studio, not only in studio, but in studio from Barcelona, Spain, my first international guest. This is Dr. Judith. Welcome, Dr. Judith, to the podcast.
Thank you, Amy.
Would you tell our audience a little bit about you and what you do?
This is the hardest part always, like introducing myself, but I will always start that I'm an early childhood educator, and that's what I love to do. That's my passion, like being with the little ones. But then in my career, I became like really passionate about math too. So then I did my PhD in math education for early years, and this is what I have been doing for the past many years. I don't want to say.
No, you don't have to.
No. And then after working at schools, at the university, now I'm lucky enough to be working for Innovamat. That is a math education organization that I love. And I'm in the early years team, and we are developing like content creation, PD for teachers, and everything around math.
And speaking of PD for teachers, that's how we got to know each other, because our team, our UPK team, invited you and Innovamat here to do some professional development for our TK teachers. And we're ending that series right now. We've done 5 sessions for about 33 teachers on Saturdays, ending this Saturday. And so we thought, what a great idea if you're going to be talking about math to have you come on the podcast and talk with our administrators, which is kind of our target audience, about a math in TK and what does that look like. So thinking about young fours coming this coming year, we always bring it up that they're going to be potentially older 3s, younger 4s entering TK. Thinking about instruction and math is so important. Administrators always making sure English language arts, math, that's covered throughout the day. We often think that these little ones are capable of, we're going to do shapes and we're going to do counting. And that's going to be where their strengths are and where we're trying to get them. But that's not necessarily the case. They're more capable than that. So can you talk a little bit about those young 4s and what they really are capable of in math?
I think that it's a really, really interesting topic, because research shows actually that early math, like the early years, like what we do in the classrooms, is a perfect prediction for how they're going to be successful later, like even more than language arts. And now we know this, and how we are going to foster rich math in early years is so important. Because if we think about how we see math in the early childhood education settings, what we see is circles and triangles and squares, and most of the time tracing numbers, but that's not doing math. Like we are kind of giving them an stereotypical ideas of math that we think that that's what they are capable of doing. And actually from Innovamat, what we are trying is to foster deep conceptual understanding. And that can be done as soon as 3-4-year-olds. That's what we need to do. And actually, the learning foundations that we have right now, that you have in California, they do have the 4 domains that then they will see also in the Common Core. So they are supposed to be working on cardinality, on operations and algebraic thinking.
Yes.
And it can be scary, this word, right? Like what algebraic thinking means in TK. Measurement, everything like geometry and spatial thinking. But when we are talking about this, it's not the teacher kind of showing them, like, again, flashcards of This is a square and this is a triangle. And then we always start with this activity, and we have done it with you and the PD series that we are doing. If I think about a triangle, and if I tell you, draw a triangle right now, which one is the one that you are going to do with drawing? Do you think?
One with 3 sides.
3 sides? And what is the one that you have in mind? Because when I see your hands, it's an equilateral, right? Triangle,
yes.
And always placed in the same direction, like one of the sides. Why do we do that? Why do you think we are doing that? Because it's the image of the triangle that we have, because we are not constructing the shapes in a way that is meaningful for us, in a way that we understand the characteristics of the shape itself, instead of the teacher telling me this is a triangle. Why I'm giving this example is because what I think that is super, super important for teachers is to understand that in the classroom, what we need to do is allow students to think, allow students to build their own like kind of transparent way of constructing knowledge. And for doing this, it's not enough with staying with superficial math, but from the beginning, we need to balance the content with the math practices. So not only all the content that we are going to be having in kindergarten and transitional kindergarten, but also how we're going to do it. Are we allowing our students to problem solve? Are we allowing our students to reason, to communicate their understanding in many different ways? And it can be overwhelming for teachers at the beginning to think how I'm going to do this with 4-year-olds. But I think that once they discover that the students are really beautiful thinkers and that they can do more and they are capable of doing all these things, teachers just make a shift and they see that, oh, this is what I want my classroom to look like.
Well, you said a couple things there that made me think a few things that we've talked about is that you said a little bit about fear. And math is fearful. Like, I was not a great math student, so math was not my strong suit in school. But I found that when I was teaching, I was a better math teacher because I had to break it down so much for myself to understand it so the children would understand it, and I knew what it was to struggle. And many times math has a fear associated with it. Even the teachers are a little bit afraid of like, ooh, how am I going to teach this? I was not a good math student. Parents are a little bit afraid. And then you combine that with the skills that you mentioned. Like, we're talking about algebraic thinking. We're talking about geometry. Those are words that sometimes are associated with middle school and high school. And we're talking about how that fits into TK. So thinking about that fear and those topics, how do you broach that with teachers? How do you share with them and minimize that fear?
Well, first of all, I think that where do you think that this math anxiety comes from? Like for you, for example, why do you think you had this feeling of fear?
Oh, because I struggled. I didn't understand.
You didn't understand. So there is a couple of things in here. Like, if we approach math as something that it can be right or wrong, then you can get this anxiety of, I'm not understanding this, I don't want to make mistakes because I'm not good enough at math. But if you start building your identity, your math identity as, first, making mistakes is a way of learning. I do need to make mistakes because if I always know how to solve the things that I'm engaging with, is that maybe I'm not having a challenge in front of me that will allow me to continue learning. So I do need this little productive struggle that makes me want to learn more. But to do this, we need first an environment that is safe, that we are going. So first, we do need an environment where the students know that they can share ideas, that they are going to be comfortable enough to make mistakes, that they can use different strategies, and those are not only allowed but valued. Like, all of us can have different ways of solving things, and we can learn from each other.
So that's a new thing because I am a child of the 80s, and we definitely were not encouraged to think outside the box. It was, here is your formula to follow, and this is the only way to arrive at an answer. And if you don't arrive at that answer in the same way I did, then it's not correct.
Exactly.
And what I've seen you talk about our teachers that you have in the PD, I've seen you challenge them to think about the processes that the children are using to think through how did they arrive at their answer right or wrong. So that allows the children to take risks in math, right? So can you share a little bit about that, about the risk-taking that young children take in math and how teachers and administrators can support that?
I actually think that is more our fear than the little ones. They do not have this fear. So I think that teachers will be surprised about how children have no problem of sharing like really out of the box ideas. Like, we were just doing some modelings at another school a couple days ago, and we have an activity where they were jumping with their feet together, and then they have to figure out which one of these jumps was the longest. But because one of the students were jumping there, the other one was jumping in the other side of the room, we cannot compare those jumps, right? So we start asking the students, how can we do this? So your mind will blow up to see how many different strategies they came with. So some of them were talking about just taking some tape and just make a line to then compare the lines. Some of them they say, oh, what if we make a horizontal line so we can see like if the jumps they were passing or they were, so that you can kind of compare the jumps in different ways. And then some of them is, what if we use something as a unit to like measure? So all of them were able to find a way to solve this problem. We don't want the students to finish the activity with a wrong answer or a wrong idea. And sometimes it will happen that they don't go there, but with the help of everybody else, we'll all will find the way of solving it. But we always talk about low floor, high ceiling tasks. And what I mean with this is a rich math activity that it has many different ways to be solved, but that everyone will be able to engage with the activity. So all of the students, no matter their moment in the learning trajectory that they are, will be able to find a way of solving this problem. The one that they need to directly compare the two things. They can just get a little piece of yarn and just cut and then compare next to each other. The ones that they are ready for counting, they can use units to do it. And what we want to say with this is all of them will be engaging in a rich math task instead of trying to make it easier for them and give them a different one. So I think this is so powerful because then also they are seeing how the others are using different strategies and they are challenging each other. And maybe next time, instead of using this strategy, I'm going to start counting because I know that I can use this too. So I just think that the idea of using in TK also activities that will start the students make like reasoning and thinking, and they are really mathematicians in there, right? Like they are not only receiving information from the teacher, but they are actually like doing math, like making math.
And what I'm hearing you say takes me to my next topic, because we're talking about how that instruction, what that instruction looks like in the classroom. And what I did not hear you say was a lot of paper and pencil, right? I didn't hear that. What I'm hearing is string, and they're cutting, or they're using something as a unit, or they're using their bodies as that part. And it's a group task. It's not sitting at their seat writing something down or tracing numbers or circling on the paper which one is longest or which one is biggest, right? They're experiencing that. And so we in ECE talk about materials that are developmentally appropriate.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how that mixes with the math and why that's so important in TK, that children are experiencing it through materials that are appropriate rather than paper and pencil?
I do think that we were talking about rich math tasks, and sometimes what it worries me is that we have like two extremes, right? We have like teachers that they allow free play all the time, and then they kind of not moving the students from the concrete part of math to the abstract. And we still need that. We still need to help students to use the mathematical language and to understand these concepts. But then we have the other extreme that is like directed instruction. And sometimes even now and more, I see TK and K teachers like, sorry if that is not what we want to hear, but they are kind of doing a pre-first. They are trying to make early childhood education closer to what they will see in the latest grades, like more a first, preparing the students for first grade. But that's not developmentally appropriate. We need something that is going to be helping the students learn in a way that is meaningful for them. So what do we want for 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds even? I know that we are focusing on 4-year-olds, but I would say even a little older students. So we talk about rich math activities with rich tasks, but I think that what is important is that we make it exploratory and inquiry, and what is my favorite part in here is play-based.
Yes.
So what we need in here is to foster play. But it's tricky to show this to the teachers and kind of go deep into what play means for math learning. So play can have many different ways, and actually we have a beautiful way of seeing a spectrum from free play to guided play. And actually what research shows is that we need both. We need moments for free play when they can like kind of consolidate the learning that they are doing and asking new questions and feeling more free to share with the others, like like kind of their learning. Like the free play is so important for little ones. But we also need other moments for more intentional learning. That doesn't mean that it's directed. It's guided. It is like how I'm going to give you an opportunity for you to kind of engage with a particular concept that we have been wondering for a while. So if I can give you some example, like there is research, for example, there is one author that I really like, that is Van Oers, that he separates like into big categories, that is like math made playful, that is like where your focus is math, and it can be a game. Like I can just introduce a game to you, and the focus is going to be math, but I do bring a context of play that it will allow us to do it in a more meaningful way for you, like, or a context, or something that is going to give the student a more developmentally appropriate way to engage with this activity. But then in the other side, we do have the mathematizing the elements of play. In here, what we have is the play as a center. And then what is important for the teacher is to know math and math didactics really well, so they can see the math that is happening during play. Because just without our interaction, math is going to happen.
Absolutely.
If we are giving them the context, the materials, and everything that they need to make it happen. So how we prepare the space, what are the materials that we are going to introduce? Even the question that I'm asking is going to help students to engage with rich math activities during play. But then what we need is for teachers to understand what is the math that can be happening, how I'm going to see it, and what are the questions that I'm going to be asking. So I'm intervening in the situation without interfering in their play. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. Because we talk about with teachers all the time about how to incorporate play and how to understand that play is not just a free-for-all in the classroom, right? There is intentionality in play, and math is happening all the time in the classroom. The children are experiencing and experimenting with math all the time, whether they know it or not. And so as we encourage teachers to ask open-ended questions and allow children to explain their thinking, and then think about how they interact with those materials, we're looking at moving them away from having to record that on a piece of paper to know that they understand the skill. I'm not saying paper and pencil don't have a place.
And I will say more about this.
Okay,
Yeah.
We're on the same track. I'm not saying that. We want teachers, I think, are saying the same thing. We want teachers to begin with allowing children to experience materials, experiment, risk take, play, and do that, and then they can begin to record those thoughts somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. And I do think that paper and pencil is a powerful way for students to individually represent and have a time for reflect about what they have learned. Because when we have activities as a whole group or even a small group, there is a lot of interactions and not all of them are getting the same ideas. So I can be, maybe I'm more curious in the same activity, same exact activity. I'm still in my point. Let's think about, let me put in an example because maybe this is better, but let's think about a decomposition, number decomposition activity, where we are talking about different ways in which we can decompose number 5.
Okay.
So if we do it in a way that the students are playing with the material, let's think like we have a beautiful activity that we love, that is just, we have a box, we're throwing 5 things inside of a box, and we have done this together, and then we are just recording how many are inside of the box, how many are outside of the box. This is just a game, and they have so much fun, and then they start recording, like, what are those scores? Then if I give them at the end of all this activity, and we are asking questions, and we are reflecting about, are there many ways that we can decompose 5? And have you found all the solutions? How do we know there are no more ways of decomposing 5? So this is really high cognitive demand questions, and they can do it with the material. But then we still need a time for individually. I give you just a blank paper, just a piece of paper, and now represent anything that you have done. So you will see students that they are still drawing 5 things. it means that they are still in the moment that they need more practice with cardinality. I'm still there. You have some students that they will start showing different solutions. There are some students that they will show all the solutions. There are some students that they starting using equations to represent this. So again, you are giving all the students the opportunity to see that they can do math, that they can show math, but in a way that makes sense for them and that it aligns with their own learning trajectory. And also what a beautiful assessment opportunity, right? Because you can see exactly where your student is at.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the paper and pencils at the end. Like, it's not, the activity was the actual engagement of counting out fives or throwing 5 things, rather than taking out a worksheet and saying, can you circle 5 things on the paper? Can you, what a more rich activity and more room for thinking and language in that for them to share and think about. Because we tell administrators and teachers also, TK is so much about integration of learning, that it's not just ELA time here and then math time here and then science. It's all mixed together. So what you described there was a good mix of some physical development, some fine motor, some math, and some language skills, all mixed in that activity. So as you're thinking now, how would I help an administrator? So if an administrator is listening to this and thinking, well, I really want to support my TK teachers, and understanding that we've said this before here, early childhood is now fusing into the K-12 system. And that's new. We're like merging 2 systems together in a way that have never been merged, and they're not exactly the same system. And so administrators don't always know about early childhood. So if you were going to give them some tips of how can they support their teachers in the classroom, what is it that they could do to help their teachers to kind of move those children along that continuum and encourage math and make those students all believe that they can do math?
I would say that the important thing here is for teachers is a shift in their mindset, right? Like it's a new way of understanding math, and actually a new way of understanding early childhood, because this will apply to any other subject. So give them time to collaborate with each other. It just goes to professional development, right? I mean, if one of the things that we are been talking for the last 20 minutes is, do I know enough about math and math didactics so in a setting of play, I can identify the math practices that they are using, the concepts that are going to be flourishing in this play situation, and which kind of questions I can ask to help them move forward. If they don't know this, they cannot do it.
Right.
If they don't know what's the learning trajectory for numbers, if they don't know what's the learning trajectory for geometry, how is the teacher going to identify like the different moments? And if I know that one children is lost, how do I take a step back? What is the step back if I don't know where they come from and where do they have to go? So first is a lot of math education and math didactics education for the teachers, but also allow for them to create a community. I do believe, I do trust teachers. I know that TK teachers are the best. I mean, I really love them. Like,
We love them too.
I know, like the PD series that we are doing, just seeing those 33 teachers, like talking to each other and just seeing their aha moments and everything that is happening is just beautiful. And they are so much open to keep improving their practices in the classroom. So I do think that collaborating and seeing each other teaching and sharing ideas and all of that is really, really powerful. So I would say that I know that it's not always possible and the arrangements are difficult, but for me, like, learning opportunities for teachers and collaboration among teachers, it will be the most important part in here.
So as we kind of wrap up our conversation, I'd like to go back to the 3 things that we kind of highlighted and talked about. So thinking about the first thing we talked about is that children at the TK age, young 4s, older 3s, can do complex math. And they can do that through play and experience and risk-taking, and they need to be challenged and encouraged to explain their thinking and share. And teachers need to support that with developmentally appropriate materials and expectations, thinking back to their foundations. What are we asking them to do, right? And then for our administrators, we want them to continue to encourage that all children can do math. We want to build that thought, right? We want teachers to build that thought. Yeah. So thinking about administrators being able to provide professional development, encourage teachers to attend professional development, but also allow for collaborative time together so that they can think through and plan together rich math activities. Yeah. Did I hit it all?
That's a perfect summary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would have to have you back again so that we can talk more about math, because this is just the teaser of like, okay, we're talking about math, but to talk in depth about some of these topics, geometry, algebraic thinking, I would love to have you back to do that. Please. But thank you so much, Dr. Judith, for being with us here today. And that's it for TK Q&A. Thanks for listening.